Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's LinkAbility Insights live stream, where we're going to be talking about turning connections into business. And I'm really thrilled to be learning more about this because it's an area that I feel I'm quite weak in. And I'm going to be talking to my very good friend, JoAnne Funch, who is in the Midwest of the USA, and she's in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Now, I'm going to bring her on the stage in just a moment. In the meantime, I just want to say hello to everybody in our audience. Thank you for joining us today. If you would like to say hello and where you're from, it would be fabulous to know. We can't tell who's in the audience unless you drop us a comment. Now, JoAnne and I, of course, are open to answering your questions. So please, if there's anything in there that you would like to know more about in terms of what we're saying, please do pop a question into the comments and we will get to it. We may come back to it at the end, but somewhere along the line we might ask for people from the audience too if they would like to join JoAnne and I on the stage if you have a question. So if you feel like you'd like to do that in person, come up on the stage and join us. You would be more than welcome. Now, a big shout out to my producer for today's Insights live stream, Cher Ferguson, who you can see in the comments. She's the person who will be making sure that everything runs smoothly. Also, a shout out to Merrill Cass. Hi, Merrill. Merrill's our connector extraordinaire, and he lets everybody and anybody know about our events, and we're always absolutely thrilled to have his support. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. And now I'd like to welcome JoAnne to the stage and say hello and kia ora from New Zealand, JoAnne.
Hello, Lanier.
I want to start off today by telling people yours and my connection story because I think it ties in really nicely with our subject matter today. Now, JoAnne and I have been connected on LinkedIn since 2018, 7 years, which is really remarkable. And JoAnne was the first person who is colleague of mine who reached out to me to connect. Now, I was really taken when she did that because she sent me a personalized video. Now, I'd never seen one of those before. And of course, because it was personalized, it really made me go, oh, wow, this lady's amazing. And I want to get to know her more. Now, another reason why it was so interesting that she reached out to me is because we do this very similar sorts of work, albeit in different hemispheres and on the sides of the world. But nonetheless, it could be said that we are in competition with each other. But neither JoAnne nor I have ever seen it like that at all. And right from our very early days, our conversations have been very, what I would call cooperative. In other words, we are competitors, but still cooperating together and helping each other and sharing information. I've learned a heap about LinkedIn from JoAnne over the years, and our conversations just quietly can sometimes run to 2 hours. We do them regularly every quarter. Partly that's, of course, because we're both gardeners and we do like to share what we're doing in our gardens. But I think the fact that JoAnne and I have built a relationship that neither of us expected over this period of time is a really good way to see how LinkedIn actually works. We would never run across each other in person in our lives because we live in different countries. And so the fact that you can reach out across the miles, across the continents on LinkedIn and build those relationships is, I think, hugely important. So, JoAnne, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Lanier. It's so happy to be here with you today, just in front of your audience. And I see some names I recognize from the U.S. So I'm thrilled to be here having this conversation. And, you know, I just want to say, people wonder too how we connected. And I just said, you know, I looked at your profile and I love to connect with my colleagues. I'm a very non-competitive person. I believe there's enough business in the world for all of us. And I rather look at it as sharing ideas and helping each other. Nobody can ever know everything for sure, right? So I think we've had such a great relationship these 7 years. I'm thrilled that you asked me to be here.
Well, you raise a very good point about sharing information with colleagues, because I found that the LinkedIn trainer community, of which we are both members,
Yeah.
is very much like that. We see each other as colleagues and not as competitors.
Yeah.
And an example of that is on my last live stream a fortnight ago, I had as my guest Karen Tisdall from Australia, and she's a LinkedIn profile writer. Well, I write LinkedIn profiles too, but she and I have never seen each other as competitors. She works simply in the Sydney area, does a very good job, but I always found her to be someone who shares ideas and also shouts out people, make sure that people know that there's more than just one person doing the same kind of work. And I really like that. And I think that that says a lot about the people who are in our space. Those of us who understand what LinkedIn is all about, and we know that it is a platform where you can give and share. And the idea, of course, is to make sure that we are giving and sharing to each other in our little colleague groups, if you like, but also in a wider way. And that is how I believe we can build relationships that move us in the direction towards doing business. So I want to get on to the things we're going to talk about today. And I just want to run through the 4 things that we've got on our list. Make sure that you keep me on point with this. So first of all, why people actually buy and why, what repels them. Well, we will have some good examples of that.
Yeah.
How to attract the right connections. How to start meaningful conversations without awkwardness. A lot of people struggle with that one. And then following up without feeling like a pest, because I think a lot of people feel really icky about that. And so I want to start with why people buy. JoAnne, why do people buy from us?
Well, let's start off with why people don't buy.
Okay.
And the reason I bring that up is because I think it's really key to understand this, right? And I think people don't buy if you have confusing messaging. If this leads to the lack of trust signals, and every touch point should say something about your credibility, show your credibility. And so the other thing is, if your LinkedIn profile isn't clear, right? If I don't understand what you do and how you're going to help me, then I don't have any trust in you. And why would I buy from you? And secondly, people do buy from those that they trust. We've all heard it 1,000 times, but are you really communicating trust? And, it's not, we've all been bombarded with offers from people, right? All of us have. And so that doesn't build trust at all. In fact, you've probably blown your first impression forever. Now, when it comes to your LinkedIn profile, and I probably am preaching to the choir, but it still goes without saying that if the profile isn't clear, and I don't know if you would be a great resource for me, I'm not ever going to buy from you, because quite frankly, I don't get it. And I did an experiment recently. I won't get into all the details, but I spoke to a group about similar topic. And I asked everybody to take their mobile phone with their LinkedIn profile and pass it to someone they didn't know. And I asked them, I challenged them, do you understand what that person does at a glance? So again, Linaire and I are always telling people to review their profile, but this is another reason people don't buy. And the last thing I want to say about why they don't buy is if you have no social proof. Social proof matters. And so if you have no recommendations, if you're not engaging at all, if you have your profile's incomplete, people are going to assume you have a hobby and not a business. Believe it or not, I've heard that before. And so I think it's time to up your professional game. If you don't have those recommendations, if you're not engaging with other people, and then all of a sudden you want them to do business with you, there's no trust or credibility. So that's why they don't buy. You're muted, Linaire.
That's because I was coughing in the background. Apologies. I think that the credibility thing is extremely important, and I'm glad you raised it, and particularly to do with profiles and I think also our content on LinkedIn. But generally, I think the main problem comes from the way we message people. And if we message people with how great we are, we can do this and we can do that for them, and those kind of all things that are all about me, then I'm not communicating any interest in you. I'm not asking you questions. I'm not wanting to know more about you. I'm not trying to get to know you. And I think that that's where it can all break down right at the very beginning and with that first outreach. And my concern with LinkedIn at present is that if you are on a free account, you can't more than 5 or 10 times a month send a personalized message with your connection invite, right? And that I think puts people on the back foot immediately, because if they're just receiving that bland default message, it's a lot harder to get that cut through and get people to agree to connect with you. And that is particularly true if somebody looks at your profile, as you've just said, and they don't know what you do. They cannot figure out what you might bring to the party. And so those two things, I think, have to go hand in hand. And I'm forever preaching that you need to reach out to people at a personal level and establish some synergy, some reason why you should connect with the other person. But then don't just drop it. Don't just go, oh, great, they've connected with me now. Follow up. And that's where you followed up really well. You followed up with that personalized video. And I know some other people who do this. Roy Kowalski, a friend of ours from Sydney, he's one of those people who'll send a personalized video. I confess, hand up, I don't actually do that. But I think it's a really excellent way to be able to reach out. Now, if you, and I know this about you, because you're such a relationship-focused person, you are less about getting big numbers in terms of new connections and more about building those relationships. Now, I think that has value and merit, and I think I would really like you to explain your rationale behind that and your process, JoAnne. It's been a long time since you and I connected, so I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, yes, I never have focused on the numbers. That's just me. So the reason I haven't is because, yes, relationship building is the number one priority for me. You know, one of my values is connection. And I really value the humanness behind connecting. I don't need 10,000 followers to validate anything. I would rather meet two people that I had a great conversation with, that I feel like I really connected with them. And it's worked for me because I build long-term relationships that turn into lots of referrals, that turns into meeting really interesting people. And so for me, I'm really consistent. Like I show up all the time consistently. And so those things have always worked for me. I can go to many of my connections and ask them for something, ask them a question, ask them for an introduction, and I have no problem getting them. And that's because I have taken the time all these years to nurture my network. I do it now. I go back through my connections, and somebody I maybe haven't talked to in a year, I reach back out to them. And it's amazing the response I get. It's amazing. So it takes time. So when I suggest what works for me, people don't want to take the time. I get it. I get all that. I can only continue to do what works for me. And when people ask me, I tell them this is what works for me. I'm really good at connecting with my network. I'm really good at asking questions, and I'm really good at staying top of mind with people. So I don't need 10,000 connections to do that. So as I say, I know it works. So
I think too, it helps, JoAnne, that you're a person who comes across as being genuinely wanting to help, right? There's nothing about you that screams, I'm only asking this because I want you to do business with me. And that's something that has really appealed to me about you right from the very beginning, is how you do genuinely want to help, because I've been the recipient of it. I know that that is true. And I don't think that you can fake that. And if you try to fake that, it just turns people off. So it comes back to what you were saying earlier on about building that trust with people, and it does take time. Now, we've all heard a lot about how automation is on the rise, and we've all been the victim of many an automated message, how engagement pods are sweeping across LinkedIn, and they do the same kind of thing. Everything is not genuine. There is very little really human interaction at all. But if you are not putting in the time and putting in the effort, I don't think that the rewards are going to be there. And over time, they will come. But a lot of people are just too impatient. We live in a world of instant gratification, right? So trying to persuade people to take time to do these sorts of things can be quite difficult. But you and I both know the value of that, and why that why that works really well. And I don't see it just from a business perspective. You and I are friends,
yes.
And that has developed over a period of time. We've never met. We're unlikely to meet in person, although a lot of people do seem to be wanting to come to New Zealand right now. But I think it's because New Zealand is such a lovely place. But the point is that we are not likely to meet in person, but we still count each other as friends, and we have a strong relationship. That means that we will help each other in whatever way we possibly can. And that takes time. Now, if that is a personal relationship, people that you do meet in person, you can't cut corners with that either. You can't automate that in any way either. And I think that if you're wanting to be genuine and authentic on LinkedIn, you've got to put in the hard yards, JoAnne.
Absolutely. It's the long-term consistency that makes a difference over time.
Mm. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Because you don't get instant results. So if you're only here for 3 months and you're going, oh, I'm not getting any results, and you give up, then you've lost all the effort that you put in over those 3 months, which might in fact take a year to materialize into something that is business for you.
And
so
and so that ties in nicely to say, I look at the lifetime value of my clients, right? If you know anything about sales, you should be measuring the lifetime value of clients. So for me, I never look at a client as kind of a one and done. I want them in my space, and I want to continue to give to them. And so the lifetime value of my clients can go on and on and on. As LinkedIn changes, right? Good clients want to be connected to you. In our case, Lanier, right? They want to know what's new, what's something that's going to change in their business. So again, it's lifetime value of clients. I don't need 10,000. I only need this small amount that keeps purchasing from me. So I think sometimes we have to look at it differently.
I would definitely agree with that. And I think that it all starts from attracting the right people. And so, why don't we talk a bit about how we do that? Because you don't turn the wrong people into clients, and they certainly don't stay with you for very long if they're the wrong people either. So, what constitutes finding the right people? How do we find them? And how do we bring them in to start the relationship building with them?
Well, first of all, like I said this to you in an email, and I'll just share it with everybody here. I really believe that you're here to be right for the right people. That isn't everybody. And I think when you understand who are the right people for you, then you start focusing on the right people and not everyone. Now, I think if you're with that said, if you're only focused on everybody's saying your ideal customer, I agree. You have to know who your ideal customer is. But at the same time, I get a lot of business from the relationships I've developed. So whether it's, referral partners, it's advocates who like my work, who will refer me. It's colleagues. So I think these are all what I'm really trying to get at is warm outreach.
Yeah.
And so I think it's easier to attract the right people when you understand who they are and how do they fit in your world? Or, who do you best help? I think we all should know, who do we best help? And then making sure that you're focusing on the warm outreach. And I'm not saying, cold outreach is dead, but think about all the people that you already know that are in your network that can push business your way. So it could be a collaboration you develop where you're co-marketing with somebody. There are a lot of ways, but that's my point really is about just knowing who you're right for to start with. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your point about warm outreach as well, because I think that people can trip over that one quite easily and not get that one right. And my suggestion around that is that you make sure that before you do reach out to somebody, they know who you are. So you might do that by commenting on their posts, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So the warm outreach could certainly be people that have commented on your posts. It
Yeah.
can be the people who have replied to a comment or the people who have viewed your profile. The people you have mutual contacts with, or maybe they've attended one of your lives. These are all warm outreach. And in terms of, attracting new business, this is where you should be focusing on, in my opinion, because these people are already sending you a warm signal. If they're commenting on your post, right? If they're looking at your profile, they're signaling you already.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just have to be awake to that, I think. Mm-hmm. And if you then respond in a really positive way to that, and I find that people who have viewed my profile are a good source of new people for me, because I've already shown interest. They've been there. They might not have connected. They might have followed me, but not connected. So then the next step is to reach out and then ask if they would like to connect on the back of the fact that they have viewed my profile, which gives you that synergy, that connection point that you can mention when you are sending that message. And once they then have connected with you, you can follow up and be of value, be of service, be of use in some way. And we don't do videos, as I've already pointed out, but one thing that we do find works really well for us, and there's some debate about whether this is still possible, but I've still got this feature, and that is to send GIFs to people. You call them GIFs, but we call them GIFs in our part of the world because GIF is a cleaning product in New Zealand. And so we call them GIFs with a hard G. And that is just a little image that moves. And we create our own ones that are branded in our colors. They might say something as simple as appreciate you being in my network. And because it's eye-catching, people see it, they spot it, they go, wow, this is a bit different. And all of a sudden you stand out and you've got a talking point. Oh, I've never seen one of these before, Linnea. This is the first time this has happened, da, da, da. And we get a lot of response with those when people won't necessarily respond to the text invite that you send in the initial stages, right? So you've reached out to connect to somebody with text. They don't say anything in response, but they just connect. And that is a great follow-up. And that's when you can start the conversation. And that really does work. Now, there has been talk recently about that feature being removed. I still have it. Share doesn't, unfortunately. But I do think that that's a really good way. Voice notes also work extremely well too.
Yeah.
We've talked about video. You're really good at doing those videos that do you still do those with people?
I do. I have a video I will send to new connections. So I do that. And then I also will use video to, and we're going to talk about and maybe it's a good time, turning these conversations, connections to conversation without feeling weird.
Yeah.
I have no problem in my follow-up sending a quick short video, or I do use the voice messaging on mobile also because it's just more personal. It's more human. So I do think. I think if you want to stand out, which is your point, you've just got to think of ways to set yourself apart from your competition.
Absolutely. And whether that's text, voice note, or video, which is something that I do. I don't do the personalized ones, but I do have a standard one I send out. Whether you do any of those things, it's got to come across as authentic and genuine, and not something that's been created by a robot or sent by a robot. And so the person has to feel that you're actually at the other end of that. You personally are at the other end. And I think that that's where the difference comes, because this might sound a bit strange really, but I think you can sometimes know when an outreach to you is machine oriented or machine made. There's something that either, I don't know, there's kind of a red flag. There's that you just sort of intuitively can sense it, I think. Now, I don't know that I'm always right when that happens, but generally I tend to know, I think, when somebody is not being straight up or genuine, but I do make mistakes. And I think those red flags, you have to be aware of those red flags. So maybe one of the ways to do it, which I know is a point you wanted to make, was asking better questions. And I think that asking questions is a great way to establish that kind of a relationship with somebody, because it shows you're interested in them, right?
100%. I think that is a skill, quite frankly, that people should spend more time learning. And, it's old Tony Robbins who said, right, successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better results. And I think that's really true. And I think people, because my clients will tell me, well, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And so I know people struggle with that. And then the other thing is asking bad questions. People will ask me something like, and I'm sure you've had this too, they'll say, well, tell me about yourself. Really?
Yeah. How long have you got?
Yeah, or tell me about what you do. Well, I can tell you haven't even looked at my profile, because first of all, I can check to see if you looked at my profile. So, dig deeper, right? And I think our profiles are really great way. There's so much intel there, right? Look where people volunteer. Look at the organizations they belong to. Look at their projects. I mean, there's a lot of clues that you can get in conversation about. But again, it goes back to point number one, takes time.
It does take time. You're absolutely right. And if you're not prepared to put in the time, I don't think you're going to get the results. I'm having a great conversation at the moment with someone that started from just a general outreach, and we're talking about specifically about a few things in our areas of interest. And one of the questions that she said to me, which I think is really quite good for moving a conversation on, is tell me something about you that's not in your LinkedIn profile. Right.
Yes.
And that means that the person has, you hope, looked at your profile, because obviously, you want to expect that. But I think that can then take the conversation into different directions, but it also allows a person, if they want to mention something personal, something they're both interested in doing. I found out this woman likes to surf. We've had a conversation about gardening. So, and then that takes that into the realm of you starting to know a bit more about the person. Yeah. And you can find ways that you might be able to help. And I much prefer to do it that way than really just go right straight in. Okay, so now we've connected. How can I help you with LinkedIn? Now, sometimes people are interested, sometimes not, but I don't know that right at the outset. And so that might not be the right question to ask. But asking something about them that's not on their LinkedIn profile, then that narrows it down. JoAnne, it sort of indicates, as I say, that you've looked at their profile, but it gives them an opportunity then to tell you something about them that they would like you to know, and they can choose which direction that goes in, business or personal.
Yep, I agree. And I just have to, I always share this because I learned this from a colleague of mine who said to me, you have to have a conversation, not an interrogation. Yeah. And how many of us have had those messages where it feels like an interrogation instead of a conversation? And so asking those good questions where you're really letting the person know you are interested. We all want to be heard.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Because I'm a former journalist, interrogation comes quite naturally to me, so I have to be quite careful. And when you back that up with the fact that I quite like to know about people, particularly people who live in other parts of the world from me, I can be a little bit nosy. It must be fair to say. So I have to watch how I'm approaching that and make sure that I don't overstep. Because some people don't want to share, and that's perfectly fine too. That doesn't mean to say you can't build a relationship with them. It's just that you have to be a little bit diplomatic and understanding that other people are not the same. I'm gregarious and outgoing. I talk a lot. I know this will come as a surprise to you, but not everybody is like that. Not everybody wants to talk a lot. And I think we have to be mindful that people are different and they want different kinds of approaches. And so some people will feel that a video might be overstepping. Some people won't. And you don't necessarily know that when you're first reaching out to them, but you can pick it up from the vibe you're getting back from them pretty quickly, whether or not that is something that they want to follow up or they've really got any interest in a conversation. So I wanted to ask you whether or not when you're connecting to somebody and they don't really respond terribly well, there's not much there, what do you do as a follow-up, or do you let it just go, or do you work hard to try to bring it back on track to where you think it should be?
It depends. It really depends on, why am I pursuing that particular person, right? So what I find if the conversation sort of dies, right? I feel like this is why warm outreach is so valuable. So I might look for a mutual connection we have. And if I see, this person knows the same person I do that I think they probably know pretty well, I'll bring that into the conversation. So I just try to warm people up, right? With just being non-salesy, right? I just want to have a conversation and see where it goes. Now, that's not 100% of the time, but I can usually get people to respond in some way by finding a way through a mutual connection. Or I always look and see if there's something in their profile I can bring up. Oh, I see we both know so-and-so, or I see you're a member of this organization. I know those folks really well, or, something like that. I think people give up too easily.
Yeah, I agree. And that answers this question that someone has asked, and they've come up as a LinkedIn user because they're obviously not connected to me. But talking about being able to get the foot in the door. So the points that you mentioned really do help that. It's creating that synergy or finding that synergy. And I don't know about you, JoAnne, but if somebody's a second degree connection, there is always something, right? Because you'll have mutual connections that you can find out whether they actually know in person or personally, rather, somebody that you know. And sometimes you can work out who that might be, and sometimes you can't. But I think that looking at their activity is a really good way to find synergies as well. Absolutely. Looking at what they're commenting on, what they're posting about, and you can obviously comment on their post, but also finding people who are commenting on their posts that you're not connected to, who might also give you that foot in the door. So to me, that makes an awful lot of sense to be able to find those ways, because if you've got your mind set on this, or you're turning your head towards it, there's always a way. There's never nothing to be able to connect the two of you if someone is a second degree connection. I've never come across that at all.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'd like to invite anybody who's got a question for JoAnne or I to join us on the stage here. We'll put the link in the comments, and you're very welcome to join us. We are a camera on event, so make sure that when you come into the studio behind the scenes here, you have your camera on and we can see you, because that's the way we sort of feel that this builds community. And that's a very good point, really. JoAnne, we do think that holding these events does help us to reach out to more people. So several people who are in the audience today that I've seen comments from are not people who have come to our events before. They're here because you have brought them with you. They're connections of yours. So therefore our visibility is now going to extend out into their networks, and vice versa. A lot of people that we know are not familiar with you. So therefore by you being here and them being here, that again extends your visibility and network as well. And I think that we tend to underestimate the number of people who come to events because they do want to network with each other. And we can do that relatively easily. I think you have to be careful. You've still got to find that point of synergy, because just saying that you were both on an event together might not be enough. But I do think that it's important that people see this as an opportunity to find new people that they might want to have in their network. All right. So while we're seeing, is there something else you'd like to say on that one? Otherwise, I'll move on to.
No. I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think I've seen a lot of people in attending live events, and then they send me an invitation, but they never say anything. And I can get the conversation going, but I'm just encouraging people to be, if you're going to do that, make sure that you send a meaningful note along.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a meaningful note does make a huge difference. But again, I recognize that not everybody can do that because they have a limit if they're on the free LinkedIn account. So
I don't agree with that with LinkedIn. I think that was a really foolish move on their part.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would say that, because I understand that they're trying to push people towards premium, but I
Yeah.
don't think people would necessarily pay what is not an inconsiderable amount of money for premium just on the basis of that. Yes, there are a lot of other good features that come with premium, but if you're trying to push people into it just because they can't send personalized messages, then I don't think that that works. All right, let's get on to the hard stuff. How we've got people in our networks who might want to do business with us. We've warmed them up by being genuine and offering things of value. We might have sent them invites to events or checklists or posts, whatever it is that we've done. We've kind of got that communication going. How do we move the conversation off LinkedIn, where it's much more likely that we're going to be able to do business with them? Because, of course, you can download your connections, but you can't download people's email addresses anymore, of course. So how do we make that leap from just having a chat on LinkedIn to actually moving that into the business space?
Yeah. Well, I think at some point you have to ask. The best thing to me to do is to ask somebody if they would be willing to have a call. And when you do that, to me, it should be a short call. Would you be willing to have a 10-minute call? Because if you leave that open-ended, number one, people who don't know you might shy away because they don't want to get in a big conversation. They don't have time. So I think it's really key, if you're messaging them, for example, on LinkedIn, and you invite them. I'd love to spend 10 minutes, and then say something specific. I'd like to spend 10 minutes learning a little bit more about your company. I'd like to spend 10 minutes learning more about this organization you belong to. Whatever that is, I think you got to ask, right? And then secondly, I think you need to make it super easy. First of all, you need to get agreement, and don't assume they're going to jump on a call. If they say yes, then say, let me send you a link to my calendar. So make it really easy for them to be willing to do that. But I think it always starts with the call. You got to talk to people.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I do that, with prospects that I have. I invite them to a short 10-minute call. Can I answer some of your questions? I'd be happy to do that. And if you are a friendly person and you're willing to come across as being friendly and not, I'm going to pitch you, people will do it. But again, I think the key is asking permission, and also how can you add some value to them? So I don't think there's anything wrong with even telling people more about what you do. If they've expressed some kind of interest, right? You could say something like, hi, Lanier, I work with professionals like you who really want to build their brand in their visibility. Not sure if this is relevant to you, but if it is, I'd love to jump on a 10-minute call.
Yeah. That makes sense, because then you're asking a question that really tells you whether or not they're interested. And if they're not, people will say. I have found that people are very definite about that, JoAnne, if they're not interested. And it's the same with me. If somebody makes an outreach of that kind and I'm not in the market for their service, I'll say exactly that. Thank you so much for the message. Really appreciate it, but that's not something that I'm looking to do right now. And just be really clear about it. And do you know where I think it goes wrong? And I think that this is partly how I feel about this as well. We see that as with the wrong way around. We see that as trying to sell instead of trying to help people.
Yeah.
And if we swap it around and go, well, I'd really like to help you, so I'd like to get on a call with you and see what I can do and answer any questions that you might have, in our case about LinkedIn. And that way you are putting on the table that you are open to discussing what you do, for sure, but also that you are really there to answer, to help them to be able to overcome any issues that you might have. And I think that that mindset swap, JoAnne, is where it really makes the difference, because none of us want to be looking like we're selling, but we have to sell to stay in business, don't we?
Right. Right. So another tip that I can give you that I've used for years is, when I'm conversing with a new connection, I will say, I'm happy to introduce you to anyone in my network. If you'd like, please let me know. And then, 9 out of 10 people will say, well, I really appreciate that. How can I help you? And I will say something as simple as this. I will say, well, if you know anyone that you think could benefit from my services, please share my name. Now, that's not threatening. It's not pitching. I just say, if you know anyone who could benefit from my services, please share my name. And I get a good response when I do that, because I'm not beating somebody over the head, right?
Right.
But I am referring to my services, so I'm not afraid to say that. And I sometimes I'll be really specific if the person, for example, asks me a profile question. Then I will say, well, if you know anyone who could benefit from having their profile updated, please share my name.
I really like that. In fact, thinking about the profile, there was a question here from one of our members. Now, I do apologize in advance. I just think he misunderstood my introduction of you at the beginning, because he's referred to you as Karen, but we know you as JoAnne. So please forgive him. He's a lovely man. He's in our LinkAbility community, and he's provided really good value since he's been a member. One of the things that I love about what we do with the community, and you're a member too, JoAnne, is how people help each other, which falls right back into what we're talking about today. People are doing business with each other because they're getting to know each other in a closed environment like our LinkAbility members community, where they can get to know each other. And I think that that's exactly, it's a microcosm of the whole bigger LinkedIn picture. But anyway, Daniel's got a question, so why don't we deal with this? And this isn't part of what we're talking about today, but since I like Daniel, let's put it on the screen and you can answer and tell him what you think.
Yeah. So what's important when writing your profile headline? Well, I still think it's important to do two things. I think you need a common title that people recognize what you do. I still believe that is powerful. And secondly, your headline should really speak to who you help and the results that happen because of you. So I think that really is important. And should it be tied with your banner? Absolutely. I think people who are in business typically get it, but I see a lot of banners that they look nice, but they're not really helping you. And I think that they should be, your banner should include, if you're a business owner, right? It should say in your banner what it is that you do. That's a big billboard, right?
Yeah.
So I think they tie together. As you said, Daniel, should they be tied together? Yeah, I think they should.
Yeah,
so
I would definitely.
Glance, right? Again, use my example, right? If you passed on your LinkedIn profile to somebody, would they at a glance get it?
Oh, yes, which of course is a very good point, because often people's banner is too small to read on the app. The text is too small and people don't get that. They might be looking at it on desktop and not realizing how it displays on mobile. You can only upload the banner in one format, and so you have to be really aware of how it looks on both desktop and on mobile. And I think that can be a real trap for people. They don't get that. They don't see it.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, there's another question here, and this is, again, a bit off the topic of what we're talking about today, but let me hear what you have to say about this boosting, paid boosting for posts. Now, I think what's happening at the moment is that there is a move towards LinkedIn allowing individuals to have their posts boosted by their company. So the company pays for the individual. So therefore, it's sort of advertising and using the post as advertising for the company, because when that happens, the company name is, as I understand it, I don't see this a lot, attached to the post, and it will say that it's promoted and that the company, the name of the company that's behind it. So what is your view on this? Interesting question.
Well, I'll give you the short answer is I think anytime you're doing paid advertising, you're just going to reach more people. So if that's your result, if that's the result you're looking for, is to get in front of more people, then I think boosting a post is worth testing. I think it's worth testing.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm a great fan. As far as I understand it, LinkedIn advertising is still very expensive and getting more so. And I don't see that at this point that there would necessarily be a lot of return on investment. And also, we're all bombarded with advertisements all the time. I'm not really sure how I would feel if somebody that I was trying to build trust with started to talk about or advertise a product that wasn't their own business necessarily, as a kind of like on a sponsorship arrangement, perhaps. I don't think I'd be very keen to see that in a post. I think that that kind of third-party endorsement. Look, I'm a bit on the fence really about this one, JoAnne. I'm not seeing it very much, fortunately, at this stage, but I can't see how that's going to help you build trust with people if they see you as simply being a mouthpiece for another organization. That's how I think I'd view that.
Yeah, I hear you, and I agree with that part of it. I do think the gold mine of LinkedIn, quite frankly, though, is the ability to target is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So typically, I'd probably tell you to go beyond boosting a post and to create an advertising campaign, but everything is worth testing. And I think you have to also, just to your point, Linaire, though, I think you have to, it depends on if you have a high-end product or service, what's the lifetime value of you got one client a month?
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Depending on what it is that you're offering, the return on the investment of the advertising could well be worth it.
Yes, that's very true. So again, the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
I think the answer to most LinkedIn questions is it depends, because not one size fits all in most situations, and it tends to depend what you're here for, what your objectives are, and a whole bunch of things along those lines. So as we head towards our wrap up, JoAnne, what is it that we need people to take away with them today? Clearly, those who don't know you need to reach out and connect to you on LinkedIn. That is a no-brainer. But what else do they need to know? What's something that maybe I haven't asked, or a tip that we haven't got covered yet, that people could take away that will be hugely helpful in helping them convert connections into business?
I guess I would leave you with this. I just have to reiterate, you want to be right for the right people. So, are you really speaking to the right people? Are you connecting to the right people? And secondly, are you taking the time to nurture the relationships that you have and think deeper on, your warm outreach? And don't be afraid to ask for a call. I think in any sales situation, at some point you need to qualify or pre-qualify a lead, and you have to get in a conversation. So that conversation might not go anywhere with that particular individual, but again, who do they know? What does their network look like? And then the very last thing I'll say is make sure that your messaging is clear. So people are really clear on your services and how you can help them. What kind of results are they going to expect working with you? So I think all of those things if you get those things in place, you absolutely can convert connections to customers.
And you are definitely living proof that this process works. And I would have to say that while you and I don't always do things in exactly the same way, life would be boring if that was the case. We'd never have anything to talk about. While I do things sometimes a little bit differently, I like to experiment with different ways of doing things because it tends to be in my nature. It still comes back right at the very beginning to that first outreach, making sure you make a good impression and following up with people. If you don't do that, then I think that it's much more difficult to convert your connections into business. People need to feel that they know you, they like you, they trust you, and that you are a good person to do business with. And if you don't have those bases covered right from the outset, then it's very hard to change somebody's opinion of you. They really need to get that message loud and clear right from the very beginning. So we have reached the top of the hour, and I want to say thank you so much for joining us all the way from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the Midwest. Today it's evening for you, still morning for us here in New Zealand. It's been a pleasure to have you with us, JoAnne. Thank you for coming and talking about this with us today.
Thank you, Anair. Pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you and to have you as part of our LinkAbility members community. And if you don't know what our LinkAbility members community is, may I suggest you pop over and have a look at us at linkability.biz, where you'll find a wealth of material and a free AI course for LinkedIn too. I've just put that up recently. And if you don't know about that, pop over to linkability.biz and take a look. I'm big on AI. I've got really into it this year and I'm finding it absolutely fascinating. So a big thank you to JoAnne, a big thank you to people in our audience. Thank you to my team member, Cher Ferguson, who's the producer of this show. Thank you to Meryl Cass for making sure that people know about this event as well. And thank you to members of the audience from wherever you have tuned in from today. We'll be back with another one of our LinkAbility Insights live streams in a fortnight. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.